The British-born criminal Shane O'Brien was at one stage given the title of Britain's most wanted man. Born in 1988, O'Brien came from a working-class community, and as time progressed, he reportedly developed a reputation for being a bit of a troublemaker. Although his life is shrouded in mystery, it has been said that Shane O'Brien made his money through crime, and he was a suspected drug dealer. Evidence for this can be seen by the way in which he lived within society. Unlike most regular people, O'Brien had no bank account or employment history. However, Shane O'Brien did have 2 children. A trivial bar altercation turned deadly during the early morning hours of October 11, 2015. 2 men were involved, and the outcome proved tragic for a man named Josh Hanson. Shane O'Brien and 21-year-old Josh Hanson had never met, and it has been said that a meaningless dispute turned into an impulsive murder. The confrontation ultimately culminated in a shocking act of violence, caught on CCTV. Just before closing time, Josh Hanson can be seen standing, drinking, and likely staring at O'Brien, whilst exhibiting what could be interpreted as aggressive body language. Although many have argued that the attack was unprovoked, Josh was facing the direction of O'Brien. O'Brien may have felt as though Hanson was escalating or instigating a feud. Whatever the initial cause, tension quickly built up. The 2 men had likely either exchanged a glance, with O'Brien perceiving some form of disrespect from Hanson during the evening. There was even a rumor that everything started over a table. Wanting to settle the problem, O'Brien can be seen casually walking up to Josh Hanson. Judging by his next decision, he likely planned to harm Hanson, and towered over the much younger man. O'Brien reportedly asked Hanson what his problem was, before one of his friends tries to step in order to break apart the standoff. However, O'Brien wasn't dissuaded and made an awful decision. Reaching into his jacket pocket, he grabbed a hold of a Stanley knife. Without warning, O'Brien removed the knife, swiftly performing a singular slashing motion. The blade pierced Josh Hanson's neck, cutting his windpipe, and the 21-year-old staggered back. Likely in shock, he desperately attempted to clutch onto the now gaping wound. As blood squirted over the bar and flooring, roughly 40 onlookers gasped in disbelief. The 37-centimeter or 14.5-inch wound was fatal, and Josh never made it to the hospital. He died, surrounded by his close friends, distraught girlfriend, and horrified onlookers. Despite the inevitable reality that O'Brien would be linked to the crime, given the circumstances he seemed surprisingly calm. He simply strolled outside, and made plans to fly abroad, in order to escape the consequences and terrible situation that he'd put himself in. Unquestionably, O'Brien wasn't your typical criminal. In a similar play of events to British criminal Kenneth Noye, O'Brien had connections to the criminal underworld, and following a crash-out murder, intended to flee Britain. He requested a flight on a private jet from close contacts. It should be noted that the man who chartered the jet was later jailed for importing 100 kilograms of heroin and coke. Plus he had also flown 30 encrypted mobile phones into Britain. In addition, the pilots had already received convictions for importing 90 kilograms of heroin into the Netherlands. Obviously, there were big-time players on this plane. Clearly, O'Brien was someone who was good at networking within the criminal fraternity, and could call in favors whenever needed. Having connections proved beneficial because he was provided with false travel documents, and even an encrypted mobile phone, with some of these phones costing £3,000 each. Traveling down to the county of Kent, he bought some new clothes at the Ashford designer outlet, paying for the designer clothing in cash. Upon later reviewing the surveillance, police were troubled by his composed movements. He had just killed a man, and wasn't acting nervous. It was as if he hadn't a care in the world. Soon, he was aboard a private plane, flying out of the country. O'Brien had successfully fled Britain, and was heading for the southeast Netherlands. The murder of Josh Hanson shook the local West London community, and garnered widespread media attention. Shane O'Brien was quickly identified as the prime suspect, and police forensic teams matched his fingerprints to a cup in the bar. Additionally, suspect image appeals helped them to narrow in on Shane O'Brien, who had been spotted in Kent. As Josh Hanson's family grieved, a major manhunt was launched to apprehend him. He was given a spot on the most wanted list for Britain. To make life on the run easier, O'Brien had made changes to his appearance, growing out his hair and beard. Moreover, he even went to the extreme of covering a tattoo of his daughter's name, replacing her name with a skull and owl tattoo. During his time spent on the run, O'Brien stayed in Germany, Belgium, and eventually landed in Romania. Eventually, O'Brien would also be added to Interpol's most wanted list. Still, despite this attention from major law enforcement agencies, he was successful at avoiding apprehension. Everything was working out for O'Brien, who was being funded by his criminal contacts. However, his luck was about to briefly run out. Shane O'Brien's violent nature emerged once more, when he was arrested by police in the Czech Republic. The wanted fugitive hadn't been deterred by his status as Britain's most wanted man, being arrested during a scuffle at a nightclub whilst on the run. However, as already seen, O'Brien had many criminal contacts. He was now going under the Italian alias, Enzo Melancelli, and was quickly bailed out of his predicament. Undoubtedly, O'Brien would have been caught sooner, because his fingerprints came back as a match to a wanted British fugitive. However, he had already fled. By this time, there had been reports of sightings of O'Brien in Spain and Dubai. Police believe that these may have been hoaxes. It just goes to show you the connections that O'Brien possessed. People were willing to help him out, and he must have been well loved by these people. The leading investigator attempting to track down Shane O'Brien had received a call from a solicitor on behalf of the wanted fugitive. O'Brien wanted to turn himself in for the murder of Josh Hanson. By this stage, police had tracked down people who had assisted Shane O'Brien, including a tattoo artist and barber. Why O'Brien felt the need to quit running is unclear. He had been a fugitive for 3.5 years. Perhaps, he felt as though he could beat the case by claiming self-defense, or perhaps the funding of his fugitive lifestyle was running dry. Either way, his entire life had been changed forever. Shane O'Brien was subsequently arrested in Romania, and extradited back to Britain to stand trial for the murder of Josh Hanson. In just 55 minutes, the now 31-year-old Shane O'Brien was found guilty, receiving a minimum of 26 years in prison. His defense was that he had been provoked, and had pulled the knife to intimidate the much shorter and younger man. Obviously, this intimidation tactic was a pretty poor excuse for knifing a man in a crowded club. Shane O'Brien's life is officially over, and he'll have to spend time reminiscing on the October night that cost him his freedom. Whatever the reason for the murder, it clearly wasn't something worth throwing away his life over. It's sad that such a simple situation couldn't have been resolved, that O'Brien couldn't have stopped for a brief second to listen to reason, and envision the consequences. Sadly, this is the outcome of many impulsive crimes, and what you are left with are two broken families, missing their loved ones. One man is now in the grave, and the other man is trapped in a prison cell. Rest in peace to Josh Hanson.